Hello, and welcome back to my Rex's Wargaming channel. And in today's video, I want to talk a little bit about how I'm going to rate my Afghans and the thought process behind that. And so I'd first like to get into those Afghans armed with firearms. And I'm going to rate them as irregulars, but given the mix of muskets, of matchlock Tordars and flintlock Jezzails and other types of muskets, I'm going to rate them as being armed with antiquated arms because of, the matchlock guns that were brought in from the Sind. They were matchlock. They weren't rifled. They weren't known for accuracy in the same way that a Jezzail was. And the fact that they're all firing mixed arms, um, and the way that they'd be actually moving, the way I'm going to play them as troops that can actually maneuver, adding the accuracy that the Jezzails are kind of known for doesn't make a lot of sense. So I'm going to rate them as irregulars with antiquated arms, but I'm going to give them go to ground because the Afghans were known to be very good at moving around in the mountains and behind the folds in the ground and the rocks, and so they're very good at that. Now I think it would be justifiable to use Afghans, uh, and make with Jezzails as more of a shooting unit, an accurate unit. But from what I've read, when the Jezzails worked like that, it's because they were set up in a way to maximize their potential. So the men were shooting with their Jezzails rested on rocks or sometimes like a bipod that you'll see with those type of weapons. They were firing down on large columns of troops from elevated positions, and even if they didn't hit every shot, if you're marching in a column and some of the guys get shot, all that fire is going to seem very, very accurate. And so, if I wanted to represent Afghans like that, I may actually put 4 men or so on an artillery base and kind of use them as a field gun or something, or a machine gun, something like that. Maybe figure out some special rules and kind of mount them on their own base, make them not very mobile. And that's just one idea of how I might do that. And those Jezzails could often be very heavy, and so the troops with them, the more accurate weapons, I don't know that they would be very mobile to begin with. Next, as far as Afghans armed with swords and shields, I would just rate them as tribal infantry with no modifiers. That would seem sufficient. And so my infantry are going to come out, my firearm armed infantry will come out at 4 points per 12-man section, and my sword and shield armed infantry will come out at 3 points per 16-man section. In my command section, I have some Afghan army miniatures. I have some guys painted as Indian Army deserters, and Umar Khan had did have Indian Army deserters in his army, kind of in his vanguard. I don't know if he had former Afghan army, but he did have Afghans. I'm not sure where they came from. I'm not really going to rate them any different, even though they would be experienced troops, because I think the experience that they brought, at least from what I read about the siege of Chitral and the fight when the British relief column arrived at Chitral, I don't think that they were fighting any better. They were a little bit better armed, in the sense that they had a lot of Martini Henrys and Snyder Enfields, but I don't feel that they were any braver than any of the other Gendolis or Chitralis that were there, because everybody that was going to run ran, and so there wasn't really a mixed quality of troops that were braver than others, at least on Umar Khan's force. They were all kind of equally. The ones who didn't run when the British showed up were kind of all fought equally. And as far as adding different weapons to them, if they had what clearly looked to me to be like Snyders or Martini Henrys, I would rate them higher. I'd rate them with modern weapons, but I try to rate all my units with what you see is what you get. And these men had a big mix of matchlock Tordars and Jezzails and some other muskets. And really, if you have weapons that aren't the same, they don't have the same ammunition, and they all have a different ignition system, be it percussion or flintlock or matchlock, you're not going to have a consistency of fire in a unit like that. And so that's why I chose to rate them as being antiquated arms. If you enjoyed this video, and I know I've been kind of going crazy on these Afghans lately, but I've been getting them done. Leave me a comment. Tell me what you want to see next. After I finish the Afghans, I think I may work on my Franco-Prussian War. I'm not sure about that. Uh, Between that and Napoleonics, and I don't know, we'll just have to see. But thanks for watching, and goodbye.